We've all seen it. That student who starts a reading assignment just full of energy, and then they just hit a wall halfway through. So what's really going on there? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down how to turn that frustration into focus by building something called reading stamina. It's such a familiar story, isn't it? A student reads those first few paragraphs perfectly, but by the time they get to the end of the page, their focus is just gone, and comprehension has totally plummeted. So why does this happen? The reason? Well, it might actually surprise you. Here's the big shift in perspective we need to make. According to reading expert Tim Shanahan, this isn't about a student not trying hard enough. It's an issue of psychological endurance, a trainable skill he calls reading stamina. So the student isn't being lazy, their reading muscles are just getting tired out.
Just think about what this looks like for comprehension. A reader with high stamina, they can keep up their understanding even as a text gets longer and longer. But for a low stamina reader, comprehension can basically fall off a cliff. They start out strong, but that sustained mental effort just completely wears them down.
Okay, Section 1, the reading stamina problem. Let's really dig into why some readers hit that wall.
So why are longer texts so much tougher? Well, for one, they're a real workout for our brains, right? They demand a lot more from our memory and our reasoning skills. Plus, they usually have more complex language and sentence structures. But here's the absolute kicker. Length doesn't just add more words, it actually multiplies the overall complexity.
On to Section 2, your new role. It's time to shift from being an umpire to being a trainer.
The best way to think about it is like training for a marathon. You would never ask a brand new runner to go out and tackle 26 miles on their very first day. Of course not. You start small and you build up gradually. It's the exact same principle when it comes to building mental endurance for reading.
This really gets to the heart of the mindset shift. You see, the umpire is passive. They're just on the sidelines calling out the errors as they see them. But the coach is an active trainer, right there with the student, providing the plan and the tools they need to build up their strength and succeed.
And this is the one thing you really need to remember. Stamina isn't something that just magically appears, and it doesn't happen just by assigning more reading. Just like any other skill, it has to be taught and developed with a deliberate, intentional plan.
Okay, Section 3, the daily training plan. This whole thing is built on 2 core principles. So the first principle is something called accountable reading. This is not just about assigning pages and hoping for the best. It's about actively making sure students are actually understanding what they're reading. We have to check for comprehension, We can't just assume that because their eyes moved across the words, real learning actually happened.
The second principle is the gradual increase method. And just like that marathon training, you start small, maybe even with just a single paragraph. Then you check for understanding. If they've got it, great. Increase the length a little bit. If their comprehension starts to falter, that's your cue to pull back a bit. It's a really responsive, data-driven way to do things.
So what are we aiming for here? Well, here are some really concrete end-of-year goals. A second grader should be able to handle around 400 words before you stop for a discussion. A third grader, maybe up to 600 words. These targets really help you pace out your training plan for the whole school year.
And hey, remember, you're a coach, so let your students in on the plan. Tell them, hey, we're training your reading muscles to get stronger. Talk openly with them about strategies for staying focused and what to do when they hit a tricky sentence. This really empowers them to be active partners in their own training.
All right, Section 4, sprints, breaks, and pacing. Let's get into some of the more advanced coaching techniques.
It pretty much all comes down to the marathoner's mantra: longer/easier, shorter/harder. It's simple. To build up endurance, you use a longer, easier text. But to build that raw strength, you use a shorter, much harder text.
This is where reading sprints come into play. You can think of these like weightlifting for the brain. You give students a really short but very challenging piece of text, maybe a grade level or 2 above them. The goal here isn't speed, it's about intense focus. And after they tackle a few of these, their regular reading is going to feel so much more manageable.
But, just like any athlete, the brain needs to rest. And this might be the most overlooked part of the whole training program. You simply can't be at maximum effort all the time. It's a great idea to schedule those intense reading workouts right before a break, like PE or art, and you should even plan for recovery weeks with lower demands. You have to remember, rest is when the growth actually happens.
Okay, our final section, the marathon goal. Let's zoom out and talk about why all this training really matters in the long run.
Because really, the goal isn't just to get through a chapter or pass a test. It's about developing resilient, lifelong readers who aren't going to be intimidated by a challenging textbook or a complex legal document later in life. We're equipping them with the mental endurance they need to succeed, well, everywhere.
So as we wrap things up, I've got a question for you. What's the first move in your new reading training plan? What's that first small step you can take to start coaching your students? Will you measure a baseline, maybe introduce some reading sprints? Or will you just start with accountable reading on a single paragraph? Whatever it is, the marathon always starts with that first step.